Hello everyone. I made a video for you about version control. So let's get started. So version control, you don't need it until you need it. So you're going to ask, why would I bother with version control? I don't even know what that is. It's like the ultimate undo button. And I'm going to tell you why you would need it, because it works when Control-Z fails. Like if you delete files or folders in the project directory, you can't undo that. You even get a warning from Unity when you try to do it. But with version control, you can bring those deleted files back. If you're editing a prefab asset directly in prefab mode, then that change is not something that you can Control-Z out of. If you're modifying scriptable objects, so you might not even know what scriptable objects are, but they're really useful for storing game data, and you're probably going to come across them at some point. But if you modify them, you can't undo that. So changes made in an external tool like Photoshop or a 3D modeling app like Blender that you save back into Unity, those changes can't be undone in Unity. Changing project settings or build settings. So for example, if you're adding or removing tags and layers, or changing physics settings, or the input settings, or build settings. Also, if you rename files in the project window, you can't undo that. So these are all things that chances are you're going to do them at some point, and you might want to undo them. And you can't just Control-Z in Unity to fix that, but version control can fix that. Also, for team collaboration, like I just attended a game jam over the weekend and we use version control, and it's super useful for teams. So you can work on the project without overriding each other's work. You can, if you're working on the same file, you can intelligently merge those changes together, for most assets. Doesn't work particularly well for scenes. I would warn you to, only work in one scene at a time, or only allow one person in your team to work in a scene at a time. There's ways that you can merge scenes, but it's advanced and painful. It's better to just not. Conflicts can be resolved when you are merging things together with the context of the different versions of that file and how you can bring them together. Also, you can track changes over time. It can be really useful to see the changes that you go through as you are developing your project, especially as it grows bigger and bigger. So you'll have a detailed history in the version control of things like who changed what. Even as a solo developer, you might want to know when you changed something and why. You see, when you check something into version control, when you check in a change, if you're doing things the smart way, you're including notes about that change. You're saying what you changed and why, and so you can go back through those changes and see. You can see how assets and script evolve over time. And most importantly, you can see when bugs are introduced, which is super useful for debugging. So there's been many times when I looked at a change, saw that this change was problematic, and you can back out a change. So you can go back to a previous version. Also, you can branch for features or prototypes. So branching is when you take your project and you create like a separate version that branches off, and you can experiment in that version knowing that the original version is safe. You could get rid of the experiment, or you could decide that's the new main version that you're going to move forward with. So for example, you create branches for new features, prototypes, or experiments, or if you're going to do like special game jam mode or temporary build. So the point is that you don't risk breaking the main game while trying out new stuff. So also, it's a cloud backup. So if you use a service like GitHub, not only do you have a local version of your game, you also have, as you check in those changes, they get added into the project that's in the cloud, in GitHub servers being stored. So that's really useful. It's really useful because it protects your work in case, say, your computer or hard drive dies, or that you want to work on a different PC. So I have my main PC, and then I also have a laptop. And sometimes the main PC is being used by like the family, and I want to keep working on my game. I can switch over to the laptop, sync up to the most recent changes I made on the PC, and then keep working. You may also want a place to store old builds or old versions of the game to make space on your hard drive. So if you're like me, you'll have a bunch of different projects on your hard drive, and Unity projects can be pretty large, gigabytes in size. So if you start to run out of space, you could make sure that they're checked into GitHub and delete them off your local hard drive. And there's a ton of space. I've never found a space limit on GitHub. I think the limits really have more to do with the bandwidth. I know there is one, but let's say I have many dozens of gigs worth of projects on GitHub, and I've never had any warnings about how much space I'm using. So also, the #1 reason why you would use version control is that it gives you confidence. Like that, the confidence to know that you can experiment with a change and safely back out of it if it doesn't work out. The confidence that with every check-in, you're moving forward towards your goal of your game being complete. It really feels like in a game when you hit a checkpoint, you know, okay, like I can keep going, but I'm safe. I'm never going to fall back more than this. So that confidence that you get about experimenting and not worrying about losing changes is invaluable, especially when you're learning in the beginning, but I mean for anybody. So let's take a look at what version control looks like in practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one of my projects and how I'm using version control with it. So this is a simple GPS game that I've been building, and it runs on the Android phone. But so you can see that I have my asset directory here, and I have some things like scripts in the scripts folder. So for example, if I open up the game master here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a simple change like just adding a comment, and then I save that change, and I switch back to Unity, and I see Unity compiles the change. Now if I open up GitHub Desktop, which is what we're going to use in our example. There's different version control software out there, but I find GitHub easy to use. So here you can see that there's one changed file in this project, and it's the game master file, and you can even see the before and after, and that the only change here really is that I added a comment. And so what I can do is I can add some notes here about what the changes are. So for my video on version control, I added a comment here in Game Master. All right, you can even add more description here. This is like the title. And so I say commit to main. So that saves it locally. But then what I want to do is I want to push it up to the cloud, and so I can press this button or up here. And so that's what backs it up to the cloud. And so now you see I have no local changes. So, and you can see this history here. Let's see, you can see my history here. You can see that I've had this commit, and I have some others as well, where I removed some AI generated art from the game, replaced it with something I created myself, because that AI art was temporary. Tested an Android build. So you can see here, like there's numerous. These are green means that this was added, yellow means it was changed. It would be red if I deleted something. So for the AI generated thing, I think it just overwrote it. So there's probably a change to the image. So you get that history. So that's really cool. Now I'll show you next how you can actually set this up. So to set up version control, we're going to open up our web browser and go to github.com. And so here you can see you can sign up for GitHub. So we first want to create an account on GitHub. That's where our project will be stored. And then we'll install GitHub Desktop so we can interface with it. So I have my gmail.com. All right, so now we need to create a free account. So this is totally free, and so is GitHub Desktop. So you're not going to have any costs associated with it. And so, all right, now we can sign into our GitHub account. Okay, so now you can see that this is the GitHub dashboard, and I don't have any repositories. Sometimes they're called repos for short. So the smart way to, or the easiest way that I know, to get a Unity project set up with GitHub as your version control is to first create an empty repo on GitHub and you can initialize it with just what's called a gitignore, which is a file that tells GitHub what files not to include in version control, which is pretty important. All right, so let's see. And I'm going to say, call this repo intermediate class. And then, so because the example repo for DNA class. All right, you can make it public if you like, but generally I make it private. And you don't need to add a README, but you need to have at least one file. But it's really useful to add a gitignore, and there's already one for Unity built in here, so we choose that. So that's really useful because you don't want to upload any more files than you need to, just to save space and time and bandwidth. So, and there's a bunch of files that Unity can create on its own, like the entire library folder, which can be huge. So the actual project files that you need to save sometimes are quite small by comparison to the entire project size. So I don't need to choose a license. That would be relevant if I was making it available to other people. So now I create the repository, and it's called intermediate class. So here you can see that the contents of this repository is just this gitignore. All right, so now what we're going to do is we would go GitHub Desktop. So download GitHub Desktop. So you download and install it. So go to File, Options, and sign into github.com. And you'll use your browser to do that. Here, and we're going to authorize. And then we'll open it back up. So now, let's see, I imagine, so it still sees my old repositories, which you won't see, of course. But now when I try to clone a repository, because it's logged into the GitHub account that I just created with my other email, my Divergent Neurons email, so I can see my repositories here. And I can see the one I just created. So, I choose it, and then I note where it's going to save that. You might want to, what I have is in my documents folder, I have a folder called GitHub, and so it automatically creates the folder for the project name. And so I do clone. All right, so now you can see that there's no changes, of course. And so if I were to browse to my GitHub, let's see, I'll show you this. So I have in Documents GitHub, here's some other projects I'm working on, and the intermediate class repo that I just cloned has a gitignore file and a .git folder that's hidden. You might not see that. You see it's shaded out because I have show hidden files and folders, this thing. But what we can do is we can open this file up, this gitignore file, and see it's just a text file, and it says what what files and folders it's not going to include and track the changes. So those will be things that are local but aren't uploaded to GitHub, and it's because those can be recreated by Unity easily. Like I mentioned, the entire library folder. So and it's actually pretty easy to add other files to this. You can actually do that within GitHub Desktop. So what I'm going to do now, if I have a Unity project, for example, so I actually just created a Unity project that I've been using to test out some Blender stuff, and it's really small, so it's a good example here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Unity projects, and I have this Blender test. And so what I can do is I can copy all these things into that folder that I just created. So if I go to GitHub and intermediate class, make sure to leave those files there, copy these files into, and you can see, it's no small amount of files. But because of the gitignore, it's not going to upload things like the library folder or the temp folder or the Visual Studio solution files. And through the magic of video editing, I'm going to speed this up or move it entirely. Okay, so copied all the files here. So now this is where we're going to want to point Unity to when we open Unity. So you can see that we've got all of the Unity files for this project, my Blender test project. Now watch what happens when we switch back to GitHub Desktop. Boom. So GitHub Desktop knows, like, these are all files that were added. And actually, you see, okay, we have stuff in assets, and we have stuff in like packages and project settings, but we don't have the library folder or the temp folder, which we know is in this directory, but the git ignore says I don't need to track those. And so when I'm making the first check-in, I usually just say initial commit of test Blender project. Yeah, that's enough. So now we press commit to main. Wait a second. Now we push up to origin. Like you don't have to push every single commit up to origin, but it's quick enough that you might as well. Like if your computer died, right there, like any of those commits that you hadn't committed up to the cloud would be lost if your computer died. And so might as well push them up there because it's quick and easy. And then if I look at my history, I can see that I have this initial commit that I just made. And so now, what we can do, all right, so what we did is we moved our project from where it was. I initially had this in my Unity projects, and I copied that over to GitHub into this intermediate class. So, technically I don't need this anymore, and I can just delete it because I'm about to make this version here the main one that I keep working on. Now, it's important to go back to the Unity hub. And so, for example, you see, like I have the Blender test here. I can just remove this from the list, and then I add a project from disk, and I go to I go to GitHub, and I go to intermediate class. So now intermediate class is here. When I open it up, that's going to be that's where I work on the project from here on. So you can see, like, this is where I was testing importing an object from Blender with some textures. And so let's see, and I have a test script here. So let's say I double click it and open it up in Visual Studio. So now if I said using Unity engine, and let's see, public class test, yeah, let's do that. So I've got on start, it's going to print hello world. Yay! But basically, I'm just trying to show you an edit to this file. So, we compile, we see changes, and then when we look in Git, we can see that this file changed from all this to this. And the same can go, so let's say if I am adding some assets, like I have, let's see, do I have a picture? Yeah, here's a picture of something that I'm just going to put in the art folder. Okay, so yeah, some stuff I made in Affinity Designer. So now you'll see not just the picture and also get a preview, but you'll see that assets, not scripts, but assets like images and 3D models and stuff, they have a meta file that is automatically generated by Unity. That it's really important that that gets checked in, because it has, like if you change the name of the file, it contains a lot of useful information you're going to want to make sure. So don't mess with this meta file, it's important. And so you can see that, like, okay, I have a change to my script as well as some files that I added. So now updated test script and imported new art. So commit to main and push it. There you go. And so now if you go back to GitHub, let's see, So here, if I refresh the project in GitHub, I can see, okay, like these are the things. So for this project that I put on GitHub, like inside of assets, you'll see that, you know, there's the test script. You'll see that this art, the new sketch art with its meta file is in there. So there you go. So it might seem a little daunting, but after a couple of times doing this, it's actually really easy and quick. And it's like I said, you don't need it till you need it, but when you do, man, you're going to appreciate it. Once you've made a mistake, you know, for example, you know, if I made some changes to this script and saved it, blah, blah, and let's say, you know, I did something, and this is going to cause some errors. And so I go over here and I say, oh, I've been doing some work in this script, and oh, crap, it created some errors. Well, you know, I could try to go back to Visual Studio and undo, but let's say that I'd already closed this file and moved on, and like, you know, didn't have the opportunity to undo that. But I've got a problem. But I haven't checked in the problem yet. So now I can see, okay, if I go here and I discard changes, what I did there is I right-clicked on this file. You can also do this at the top if you have multiple and discard all changes. But when I discard a change, then I'm going back to the previous version. And so now when I go to Unity, it'll reload the previous version of that file, and the issue will go away. So, and I'll show you here that this is the previous version of that that file, of that script. So there you go. Example of how useful version control can be, how easy it is to set up. So give it a try. Do it with a test project. And let me know if you have any questions or something didn't work out for you. All right? Excellent. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.